Hey, Sisterhood. Welcome back to another episode of Sisters. On this episode of Sisters, we will be talking about our fathers. Stay tuned. And we are back. Before we get into today's episode, let's pay some bills. We want to give a shout out to Winners Palace, located in Brooklyn, New York. It is owned by overseas based Guyanese Mr. Kevin Beaton. Also, Wonder Scrub Like Silk. We also want to give a shout out to Glam D Loungewear. And of course, the Shimmy Shauna brand. Hi, sisters. How are you today?
Hi, Shimmy.
So yeah, today's topic is going to be a bit vulnerable. For the most part, my sisters and I don't think I know I haven't really spoken about it, so I don't know what to expect from this episode. So keep an open mind and bear with us. We're going to be vulnerable as we, I guess, dive in a bit with our relationship with our fathers. So often we focus on our moms, which is fine, but today we want to explore our relationship with our dads. I'm gonna I'm gonna start off with Svetlana because you'll notice out of all my sisters, we all have a different we represent a different dynamic with our fathers, and I'm sure most of you can relate to either relationship, whether it's the relationship Svetlana would have with her dad, or Colleen, or Chanelli, or even myself. So, Svetlana, why don't you share with us what your relationship is like with your father?
Hi, good night, sisterhood. Well, I've had a very, very good relationship with my dad. I can't remember a time when he wasn't there for me. In fact, growing up, I always say he made my childhood very fun. He used to take us to, we grew up in a forested community, it was a logging community, and dad took us to a falls or a creek every weekend. He ensured that, we had that time spent with him. And I'm saying we because I grew up with my two brothers at that time was Cleon and Laurent and myself. I have other siblings, but they didn't grow with us. So I'm going to speak when I say we, I'm going to be referencing to them. And so I know there was a point in time, and this is very emotional for me because my father, like my mother, means the world to me. And it's because of them I am who I am today. I remember um, I used to be playing with needle and thread, sewing. Children, you have your dolly house and you're sewing clothes and so on. And he would work in the interior, but he would come home ever so often during the day to check up on me. And it so happened at that time I was home alone because my mom had a shop that she was running. And so I was trying to needle or thread a needle, and it fell, and I jumped on the needle, and it he was there just in time. He came home just in time. And back then you didn't had like um it was a small community, so it's not like a big hospital or
Mm,
anything. He literally fetched me to the health center,
mm,
and for hours they worked on me because I had stepped on the needle. And you know what they say, it travels, but in that case it's stuck in a bone.
mm,
And so he was like my savior. I said he saved my life several times. I remember going to a falls, and I came face to face with a snake, and he
mm,
was there to guide me through that process and tell me, hey, Svetlana, don't move. They
mm,
call me Sifo. Don't move. I got you. Um, I could tell you many, many stories. August holidays, he would take me into the forest and my brothers as well,
mm,
and we would go and shop. I would call it shopping in the forest.
mm,
You would get like pumpkin and corilla and pepper, and he just made my childhood fun. I used to like accompany him on the trucks or his vehicle along the Mabura Trail, and he was always there. And even as I got older as an adult and I ventured to study, my parents weren't, I won't say they were rich or they are rich, but the little that they had, they gave it to me, and he
Mm.
ensured that whatever he could have afforded, you know, he gave to me, and he ensured that I was able to go on to university. He supported my career. He has always been supportive, and I will forever be thankful and grateful to him for who I am today. And I'm so happy that we're talking about this topic because I remembered once I went to Bartica. Now, this is where my father is from. And I was speaking with a woman. I was there to support another colleague who was entering a pageant. And I was so excited to tell the person that, my father's from Bartica, and, I have siblings in Bartica and so on. And they were like, oh, I never really heard anything about your father. I know that he get a whole set of children about the place and he don't look after none of his child.
Mm.
Listen, let me tell you something. If you'd caught me that night, you probably would not have found blood. I got so emotional, it brought tears to my eyes
Mm.
because when my mother wasn't there for a period of time, she had to leave the country, and my father combed my hair,
Mm.
fed me, cooked. He used to get up at 4 a.m., cook for me, looked after his dogs, and ensured that I was taken care of. And to hear somebody, just because in the past he may have,
Someone who's looking, yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
he may have made some, I'm not saying he's a perfect husband, but I'm saying the father that I know, very supportive. And I had to set the record straight. I said, you see me here? I'm a university graduate with distinction. I am a successful journalist, and everything that I have is
Because
because
of your
of my
father.
father. Now, my father didn't give me riches, he didn't have millions to give me, but he encouraged me to study, to focus on my education. He guided me along the way. And for me, it was more than material stuff. And he has always been supportive. I remember when I was about to graduate, I was devastated because I thought I would not have graduated with distinction. And my father messaged me to say, Svetlana, it was a hard 4 years, and we are proud of you.
Mm.
I eventually graduated with distinction, but to know that even at my lowest, even at a time when I felt I wasn't doing enough and I hadn't done enough, he was there.
Mm.
And to hear somebody speak ill of him brought me to tears. And I said, you know what? I'll forever talk about
It's okay.
how loving and caring he was. And not because he had millions to give me, not because he had house and land or anything of the sort, but because of the values. I remember my father helping individuals, and my father had me write applications because, I'm the one always writing.
Mm.
And he said, Svetlana, come, I need you to write an application for somebody. And to myself, I said to him, I said, but why we always got to be writing people application? You know, he said, Svetlana, never get tired of helping people.
Mm.
And that stuck with me forever because he taught me the importance, because one day I too would
You
need
need
help.
help. Mm-hmm.
And so my father helped many, many people get jobs, write applications. All now I go to Linda and he telling me, I'm trying to get a job. And he doesn't even have a job. And he's trying to get a job for
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. You know? And so, it's different. I know people probably may not have had, and my other siblings probably would have different story to tell. But I believe he has always been very supportive of his children. Once you're doing good, he'll be happy for you. You understand? And I can't change my experience with my dad because somebody else didn't have
Right.
a good experience with theirs or him. I can't feel sorry. I can't be apologetic for that. And I will never be apologetic because he's the best. He's the best. And when I look at my father, I said, you know what? I want a father like my father for my children.
Mm.
You understand? Someone who's always there, who's pushing you. I remember when I used to there talking about boyfriend. You think you could go and tell your boyfriend? He asks you when you're going to finish your degree, when you're doing your master. Sometimes it gets you annoyed, but that has been his drive, his focus, and his pushing you to do the best you could. I mean, I'm so sorry for taking up
No,
that
it's all
amount of
right. It's all
time.
right.
Wow, that was beautiful, Svetlana. And I will have to attest, Svetlana's father always sends plantain chips for me. Anytime someone is coming up to New York, he will make sure he makes the best plantain chips. And I am so grateful for that small gesture. We're gonna go into the relationship Colleen has with her dad. Hi, Colleen. I know it's gonna be emotional, but we're gonna get through this. We never really.
All right. So, my dad is deceased. I do not know my father. And so I grew up with a stepfather. Um, and so I am going to try my best to get through this without being emotional. But I remembered when Shamiza was sharing the topics in the group that we were going to be discussing. I said to her, I said, I don't want to discuss that topic, but it's fine because I don't want to daunt anyone or daunt anyone's spirit. So I said, I'll have less to say. And so Shamisa was like, call, but or see, I never really knew about your dad. And I guess after so many years, that's when I guess they learned that my father is deceased. I guess Chanelli is aware of that because Chanelli is a part of the family. And so it has always been a challenge growing up because in as much as how I had my stepfather there and he would provide for me financially and provide my basic needs, I was still lacking that love and that emotional support. And as a stepfather, he's dating your mom because my mom's husband. And so, I guess, they feel as though they're obligated to certain things when they would have taken a woman with a child. And so my basic needs were met. I got my school uniform, I got my whatever expense needed to be taken care of, whatever needs I needed. But as I said, I was never fortunate to have a father at my graduations. I was never fortunate to have a father play with me, take me out to evenings, scroll, or I've never had a father to show me off to the world, pamper me, play with me, and so forth. I remembered, and this always stuck with me. I remembered because at the time where we were living in Linden, it was a two-bedroom house. And so we used to be sleeping on a bunk bed. So it used to be myself and my cousin Toya. We grew up like Shamiza and her cousin. We grew up like sisters. And so was my cousin and I used to be on one at the top, and my brothers used to be at the bottom bunk. And in the mornings they would go over in my mom's room, and they would be playing with my mom and their dad, which is my stepdad is their dad, and they would be playing and ramping, and you would hear in the big giggling and so on. And I would be in my space in my room, and you would never hear um like, come over, or where is Colleen, or why isn't Colleen over here, or so I always remember that, but I never allowed it to taunt my spirit or anything towards him, because I felt like, for men, I understood when it comes to females, they kind of they're skeptical when it comes to females. And if you're taking a woman who has a female, you try your best to secure yourself, so that you wouldn't probably be called, or probably say, oh, you interfere with a child. I don't know. I guess I try my best to wrap my mind around why he wouldn't, or why he never wanted to, like hold me and hug me and take me out and play with me and so forth. And so I would tell my siblings on my father's side, because my father has four children by four women. And so today he's not here, and I'm happy that I know my siblings. And I would say to them, I said, I blame my grandfather, because my sister, who is in the US, she doesn't know her side of the father, her father's side. I don't know my father's side. I recently, thank God for Latoya Knox, my aunt, who we were in primary school, and I think we were probably in grade 5 or grade 6, and she heard my title was Rogers, and she started to investigate, and she was like, oh, you Rogers, XX person. And the only person I knew was Latoya's father, which was my grandfather. Every other Rogers, I had no clue who they were. And so Toya took it upon herself to say, okay, well, I'm going to have to take you to your aunts and your uncles and so on. And I felt as though my grandfather, knowing that my father was deceased, I mean, I can't be angry at him, because he wasn't there. I've heard stories, but I don't know the type of man my father would have been to me if he was here. So I really don't care about, the stories and so forth. He wasn't here to live his true self, or to show the type of person that he is. And so it is hard, because now I have to be, um, oh, people ask me, oh, you're Rogers, are you related? And I'm like, no, I don't know. I gotta call my aunt and ask her, or I gotta call my grandma and ask her. And, it's like I always have to call somebody to ask them, because I don't know if this Rogers is related to me, or if this Rogers is not related to me. And so, coming from my grandfather, coming from my stepfather, I've never given that love and that support and so forth. And so I had to I had to accept a father in a woman's figure. And so there's two fathers in my life that are females, and that is my mom, and I'm going to call her name, Robin Sharon Ben Sanscalot, and my aunt, Charles Smart. Those two persons have those two persons have always um, been there for me. My sisters know this as well. They don't know any man in my life, because there is none. And so my aunt, they would usually tell me, oh, Cully, you have everything. You don't have to work for anything, because you have everything. I don't know why is it you just behave like you're heading good sometimes, when you get all these things at your foot um, and at your disposal. And so I thank God for those fathers. And I can tell you, I know there are persons who are in my position. I can tell you, there is someone in your life that I'm certain that has your back. Your father doesn't necessarily has to be an individual who is a male figure, or someone who is of a male stature, or someone who was born a male, but that person can take on um, a woman figure. And so my aunt has done that, and my mom has done that. And I'm grateful for those two fathers that I have in my life. I still feel a type of way because I'm human. I still feel a type of way. Like I was sitting here and Lana was sharing all these good stuff about her father. It kind of brought chills because that is something I've never experienced with a father. And like my mom, my child father and I, we don't really have a good relationship, because he seems to think that I'm bossy or whatever. But my mom, she always, she would call and she would say, you know what, my grandchild must have her father in her life. And, I thank God for her because for me, it wouldn't happen. And she's always, she called Maddie's father, Maddie's in tongue, Maddie this, Maddie that, Maddie that. And she always maintains or ensures that there's a relationship between my daughter's father and her grandchild. And, I would oftentimes say I don't want my daughter to go through the same things that I would have gone through with not having a father there. And in as much as how I would say that, when you're going through a certain phase, you tend to go back on what you're saying. But I thank God that my mother is there to bridge that gap. And it's hard. It's difficult. I haven't learned how to deal with it, not having a father. I haven't learned how to deal with it because I still get emotional whenever I see persons with their father. Sometimes when fathers would attend meetings or they're there for their daughter. Like the other day, Svetlana had her baby shower and her father was there. We're talking about fathers. Other persons were there, of course, mom, everyone was there. But he was there and he was fetching the drinks and he went and he held her and he hugged her and he showed her so much love and compassion. And I felt away because I'm like, oh, this why this couldn't have been me or. But that's my little story as it relates to my father. I'm still working on my emotions. I may look tough, but that's one of my biggest challenge. Shami?
That's a lot of vulnerability there. My. And I do agree, Colleen is surrounded by what I consider to be women king. Auntie Cheryl has definitely played a part in all of our lives because of Colleen. She's there for us, even to this day. She would send us stuff just because. So we too are thankful for Robin and Auntie Cheryl, I must say. And as I stated earlier, there's a relationship that you out there may be able to relate to. Svetlana has a beautiful relationship with her father. Colleen, unfortunately, was never able to meet her dad. I, on the other hand, I know my father, and we have a strained relationship. Before I even get into that, I'll just give a quick summary. I grew up with my mom and my grandfather and my aunt and my cousin, Yushana, who is pretty much my sister. And because I had my grandfather, may he rest in peace, he passed last June, which is very hard for me and still is. But because I had him in my life, at the time growing up, I never really felt a void of not having my dad present in the home. My mom would always tell me great things about my father. He migrated to the United States when I was, I think, like one. So very early on, he migrated to study. My dad is an extremely intelligent man, very intelligent. So growing up, I knew of him. We would talk. He would call. He always sent money for me. And because I was surrounded by a good village, my mom, my aunt, even my high school teacher, Andrea Wilson, Dr. Wilson, sorry, I grew up around a lot of women king. That's what I call them. So I never really felt a void for my adulthood, it's where it all came crashing down, and that's my relationship with my dad. Svetlana knows firsthand. I think she was there to witness the beginning of the deterioration of our relationship. I am grateful to my father for bringing me to the United States to give me an opportunity to be who I am today. I want to say that. I want to say, despite our struggles, I know my father loves me and I know he is proud of me. With that being said, we simply do not get along. We've tried, and for some reason it just doesn't connect. I don't know why, but it's very tumultuous between my dad and I, and we would try on and off, and something would happen. Like we would get into an argument, and some of you may have heard the stories, maybe from him, I don't know. Some of you may have not, but we have faced some extremely difficult times, my dad and I, extremely difficult. Even legal matters, unfortunately. And out of respect for my father, I don't want to get into what that legal battle would have been, but it was rough. It really was. And I haven't spoken to my dad in about a few years, actually. But that has been pretty much the course of our relationship. We would reconnect, and then something would trigger him and probably me, and we would fight, like with words, not physically. He's never touched me. And we would have a big blowout and say some really mean things to each other. And then we won't talk for like about 4 to 5 years, and then reconnect again, have a blowout, not talk for another 3 years. And that has been the roller coaster that we have been on as father daughter. I don't know if that affects me as an adult. I don't know. These are feelings I've never spoken about. Maybe I should talk about it, but I don't know if it affects me. And I don't know if it's feelings that I want to even uncover, truthfully. I don't know if I want to face it. I don't know if I'm ready. I feel like life is good as is, but now that I'm embarking on marriage, I'm thinking of things like, what happens when I have a child? Do I not tell them about their grandfather? I don't know the answer to any of these questions, but if my dad is looking at this, hey dad, I want to say I love you. Despite of it all, I do, and I really hope you're well, because I haven't spoken to you in quite some years. So I hope all is well. But moving on, let's hear from Chanelli. Chanelli, tell us about your dad.
Well, I'm thinking, good night, guys. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, maybe, I don't know, maybe I look at my father differently now that I've heard everyone else's story, or maybe not. But my father, when I was born, I was told, disowned me. He said, I'm not his child, which is fine. But the sad part is, I grew up to look just like the man. I'm like, for what is worth, my mother always owned me. Why didn't I look like her? Thank God for maturity. I'm now beginning to look like her. So I'm happy about that. But my father was very much absent. Um, and I think it's probably something, I don't want to say heredity, but he don't really know his father either. So the strange thing is, so I know my father very well. When I was a little girl, I went by my father like a few times. And when I say few, I mean like a few times, like 2 times. And I went for vacation. But I couldn't spend the vacation by him because he's married to somebody else. And of course, there's a rift between the outside children and like his children that he's living with. So I remember I used to go by my grandmother's house, and he used to come at my grandmother's house to spend time with me there. So I would go, and he's always jovial and happy and funny and those kind of things. That much I know about him. He likes to dance. Whenever we're around, whenever we're around each other, like we get along fine. But it's just that he never really played like a father figure in my life. Like he was never there to, like Luther Vandross said, dance with your father again. I've never had, well, until I got older, but younger, I didn't know of that. What I do know is that my mother used to have to curse him out every time she needed him to do something for me. And this cursing used to got to be like probably on for a week, and then he would take shame out of his eyes, and then he would say, okay. So when I wrote Common Entrance, for those who don't know what Common Entrance is, it's like an exam that you write that affords you the opportunity to go to a secondary school. So, or what you would call junior high here. So at that time, my father decided that he was going to make contact. This is after hearing that I did well at Common Entrance. That's where I met my lovely sisters. So, in every bad situation, there's something good that always comes out of it. And he called and he was like, oh, my daughter, I heard that you did well and I wanted to congratulate you and blah, blah, blah. And my mother used to always say like strange things about my dad. Um, he is he's the only man she ever had a child for. So the least he could have done was be present. But even to that, he couldn't do. And my father has 12 children. Of the 12 children that I know of, I was told he has more. However, I know my siblings, we have a good relationship, we get along well. But what I was going to tell you is that my father don't know his father. So when I was like probably 28, 27, there somewhere about in my 20s though, my father decided to take me to introduce me to my grandfather. So I'm like, okay. I was excited. I'm going to go meet my grandfather, yada, 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 ting, ting, ting. So I went, I met the man. He was so proud. My father was like, oh, this is my daughter. She graduated university. She did, she that, she blah, blah, blah. And this is like, look at you taking the credit for all the work that my mother did. Nonetheless, I met the man, yada, yada, yada. Only to find out a couple of years later that man isn't my father's father. That man isn't my father's father. So I'm like, I was excited to meet the wrong person, but the man that he introduced me to, we kind of have a little relationship. Like every now and again, I would call and check up on him because to me, that's my grandfather. But when my grandmother died, which was my father's mother, then we found out that that man wasn't his father. So I'm like, okay, maybe we have to do some more searching to see. But one thing I always told myself is that I'm not going to blame my father, or I'm not going to punish my father for the past that we had. Like whatever happened between him and my mother, I feel like it was wrong. I don't know the real truth of the story, but because everybody's version seems different, and I can just come to a consensus after listening to everybody's story, but that doing that would make me hate my father. And I don't want to do that. So what I said to him, I said, listen, whatever happened in the past, you said I'm not your child, that's fine. You said that you weren't sure because it was a long distance relationship, yada yada yada. The man just didn't like woman. That's the basic truth. So I said I'm gonna give you a chance. Now that I'm older, to prove to me the father you could be, as if the past never happened. And he was like, okay, cool. So I'm like, oh, we go in. I would call him, check up on him. He believes that I'm the only person that can calm him down. Like, he used to smoke. When my siblings want him to stop smoking, they call me. If he has to go to hospital and he's being stubborn, they call me. If some decision is to be made, they call me. Fine. So I said, let's reconcile what we never had. So he was like, good. So I called on him one time. I said, you know what? I'm about to start building, and he's a carpenter. So I'm like, I want to know if you could come and help me put my foundation down so I don't have to pay somebody all this money and I can give you part of the money. He was like, oh, he calls me Nels. Yes, Nels, I got you, yada, yada, yada. Time come, the man never show up. I'm like, strike one. I ain't got time to waste. Something else, I had asked him for help like 2 times after that. And he's of the opinion that I want financial help. I don't need financial help. I just want you to make your presence known and felt. And 3 times he didn't. And you know what? I forgive him, I forgive him, I forgive him, I forgive him. Even until now, I'm still forgiving him. But I realized that one day we had like a little heart to heart talk, and he said, you know what, Chanel? Is because I never really had a father. Like, I don't know how to treat my children certain times. Like, he is not this whole sentimental, emotional type of man that can say, oh son, he gave it to you hard and rough and stuff like that. So my father wasn't there. I do love him dearly. I wouldn't trade him for the world, because without him I would have probably been born into some other family. I don't know what that would be like. But what I can say is that I've had people who plays a father role to me that I will never ever ever regret or sacrifice or forget. Like, I've had father figures that they weren't in relationships with my mom, but my godparents. We spoke about the episode before about godparents. My godparents, they played full father figure in my life. I knew I had the birds and the bees talk from my godfather. When I wanted to start talking to the first boy I was considering my boyfriend, I had to get my godfather to talk to my mother to convince her that she needs to allow me to talk to boys. So I am not missing or lacking anything, but if I wish I could have gotten that from my father, I do wish for that. And so that's why, even though it's trial and error with me and my biological father, I wouldn't give up on the journey, because I know of people who don't have somebody they can even call to give a second chance to, though they may wish they had somebody to do that. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt, and I will give him room to make mistakes. But the problem will come when you refuse to correct the mistakes and not try to do better, not only by me, but by all your kids. And he has come a far way. Of this, I'm thankful for. And I'm thankful too that I can tell him exactly how I feel now that I'm an adult. And he would, try to understand, and he apologizes for things that he did many years ago. I'm like, no need for you to do that. Just correct your now and onwards. That's what is important. We can't do anything about the past. Correct your now, and then we'll be good after that. So if you're listening to Mr. Sobers, just know that your daughter loves you. And I don't care about the material things. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the past. I'm just happy that I can say my father is still alive, because I lost my grandmother, who also played a father to me, both of my grandparents. I lost my grandfather, the one that I know and the one that I claim. He is still alive. Thank God for that. But I just want you to play your part in being supportive emotionally, and know that I got your back.
Wow. Wow. I think we'll wrap it up here for this episode. That was emotional. And I think my sisters for being honest and vulnerable. And I really hope our viewers, you learn something or you feel encouraged to reach out to a parent you may not have a connection with. We'll keep you posted and updated. We'll probably do a part 2 of this episode. I'll let you know if I talk to my father. Hi, George.
Daddy.
But yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and we love you for watching. Don't forget, we are on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and most recently, Apple Podcast. And yeah, we love you for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.